Have you ever noticed how often we humans talk about world records? The tallest building, the fastest car, the heaviest weight lifted by a person. We love to measure, to compare, and to celebrate extremes. But if you take a step back and look at the natural world, you'll realize that our human records are nothing compared to the extraordinary achievements of nature itself. Some of the Earth's features, like trees, rivers, and mountains, hold records so unusual and mind-bending that they make human accomplishments look like child's play. So today, let's take a long journey together into the wilderness, into deserts and rainforests, deep valleys and high mountains, and discover some of the strangest natural records our planet has to offer. And I promise you, by the end, you'll be left with a sense of awe at how incredible this Earth really is. Let's begin with one of the most iconic symbols of life itself: trees. The titans of the forest. When you think of tall things, maybe you picture skyscrapers or radio towers. But nature has been building skyscrapers long before humans ever picked up a hammer. In Northern California, hidden among the coastal fog, stands a giant known as Hyperion. This coast redwood, discovered in 2006, is officially the tallest known tree on the planet. Hyperion rises to nearly 380 feet, taller than the Statue of Liberty and almost as tall as a 35-story building. But what's even more fascinating is that Hyperion is still alive, still growing. And it isn't alone. Dozens of its neighbors in the same forest also exceed 350 feet. The secret to their size lies in the climate. The coastal fog delivers moisture, while the mild temperatures allow them to grow for centuries without stress. It's like the perfect tree-growing recipe. Yet being tall isn't the only record a tree can hold. Let's talk about age. Imagine a tree so ancient that when it first sprouted, humans hadn't even invented writing. In the White Mountains of California lives Methuselah, a bristlecone pine that is more than 4,800 years old. That means this single living organism began its life around the time when the pyramids of Egypt were being built. And Methuselah isn't alone either. In the same region, scientists have identified other bristlecone pines that are more than 5,000 years old. They survive in harsh, windy, rocky environments where almost nothing else can live. Paradoxically, it is this harshness that keeps them alive, because nothing grows fast enough to compete with them, and pests have little chance of thriving. If age is impressive, then how about size in terms of width and mass? Deep in Mexico, in the town of Santa Maria del Tule, there stands a Montezuma cypress known as El Árbol del Tule. This tree holds the record for the stoutest trunk in the world, measuring over 137 feet in circumference. It looks less like a single trunk and more like several trees fused together, a massive green cathedral supported by wood. Local legends even claim that the tree was planted about 1,500 years ago by a priest of the Aztec wind god. And then there's the record for the largest living organism on Earth, which, surprisingly, also belongs to trees. In Utah's Fish Lake National Forest lies Pando, also known as the Trembling Giant. At first glance, it looks like a grove of quaking aspens, thousands of trees stretching over 100 acres. But genetically, every tree you see there is identical. They are all connected by a single underground root system, making Pando one of the largest and oldest living organisms on Earth. Scientists estimate its age at around 80,000 years. Think about that. This organism was alive long before modern humans spread across the globe. Trees, in their many shapes and forms, are living monuments of time and endurance, but they're only the beginning of our journey. Next, let's climb higher, much higher, and explore the mountains that define our planet's surface. Mountains, the stone giants. When we talk about mountains, the first name that usually comes to mind is Mount Everest. And yes, Everest is officially the tallest mountain above sea level, reaching 29,032 feet, or about 8,849 meters. It's the roof of the world, the ultimate challenge for climbers, and an icon of natural grandeur. But Everest doesn't actually hold all the mountain records. If we measure a mountain not from sea level, but from its base to its peak, then the champion is Mauna Kea in Hawaii. From its underwater base on the ocean floor to its summit, Mauna Kea measures more than 3,500 feet tall, making it the tallest mountain in the world in absolute terms. That's taller than Everest by more than half a mile. But most of it is hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean, so it doesn't get the same fame. And then there's Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador. While it isn't nearly as tall as Everest, just over 2,500 feet, its location near the equator gives it a surprising distinction. Because of the Earth's equatorial bulge, the summit of Chimborazo is actually the farthest point on Earth's surface from the planet's center. In other words, if you want to stand as far from Earth's core as possible, you don't climb Everest, you climb Chimborazo. But mountains aren't just about height. Some hold records for their isolation. For example, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania is the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. Unlike mountain ranges like the Himalayas or the Andes, Kilimanjaro rises abruptly from the plains all on its own, creating a stunning spectacle that dominates the horizon for miles around. Other mountains are famous for their unusual features. In China, there's Mount Tianzi, known for its almost alien-like stone pillars that look as if they belong in a fantasy film. In Australia, there's Mount Augustus, which holds the record as the largest monolith on Earth. It's even bigger than the more famous Uluru. And let's not forget mountains of color. In Peru, the Rainbow Mountain, or Vinicunca, has become world famous for its naturally striped slopes, created by layers of minerals exposed by erosion. It looks like someone painted the mountain with a giant brush, but it's all natural. Mountains can be tall, wide, isolated, or dazzlingly colorful. Each one is a geological story carved into stone over millions of years. But where mountains rise, rivers flow. And rivers, too, hold records that defy imagination. Rivers, the arteries of the earth. When people talk about rivers, the first record that comes to mind is usually length. For many years, the Nile in Africa held the title of the world's longest river, stretching about 4,135 miles. But more recent measurements suggest that the Amazon in South America may actually be longer, at about 4,845 miles. Either way, these two giants dominate their continents, shaping civilizations and ecosystems. But the Amazon holds another, perhaps even more impressive record. It's the most voluminous river in the world, carrying more water than the next 7 largest rivers combined. In fact, during the rainy season, the Amazon can discharge so much water into the Atlantic Ocean that the sea remains fresh for miles offshore. Imagine standing on a beach and drinking fresh water straight from the ocean. That's the power of the Amazon. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there's the world's shortest river, the Roe River in Montana, USA. At only about 200 feet in length, it flows from giant springs into the Missouri River. You could literally walk its entire length in less than a minute. It's a tiny reminder that records don't always belong to giants. Some rivers are strange because of the way they flow. In Venezuela, the Casiquiare River is a natural canal that connects two major river systems, the Orinoco and the Amazon. It's the only river on Earth that naturally links two massive drainage basins, essentially allowing water to flow from one great river to another. Then there are rivers that defy logic by flowing backward. The Chicago River, for example, was engineered to reverse its flow in the early 20th century to protect the city's drinking water from pollution. But nature has its own examples too, like when tidal forces temporarily push rivers inland against their normal current. And speaking of strange, consider the boiling river of the Peruvian Amazon. Known locally as Shanai Timpishka, this river can reach temperatures of up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook small animals that fall into it. For years, scientists thought it was just a myth, until they confirmed that geothermal activity deep underground heats the river along its course. There are even rivers hidden beneath the surface. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, vast underground rivers flow through limestone caves, creating cenotes, natural sinkholes filled with crystal-clear water. These underground rivers are some of the longest known cave systems in the world, and for the ancient Maya, they were portals to the underworld. Rivers can be giants like the Amazon, tiny trickles like the Roe, boiling hot, flowing backward, or even invisible beneath the ground. They remind us that water is life, and life takes many forms. Nature's final word. So what have we seen on this journey? Trees that tower higher than skyscrapers and live longer than empires. Mountains that measure not only height, but distance from the center of the earth, or that dazzle us with colors like a rainbow painted in stone. Rivers that stretch across continents, pour unimaginable volumes into oceans, or remain hidden beneath the ground, shaping entire civilizations in secret. These are the strangest records of nature, but they are not just curiosities. They are reminders. Reminders that our planet is far older, far more powerful, and far more inventive than we often give it credit for. We humans love to build, to measure, and to compete. But in the quiet endurance of a bristlecone pine, or the immensity of Mauna Kea rising from the seafloor, or the endless flood of the Amazon, we see that nature's records are not about competition. They are about resilience, about balance, about survival. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Because while human records may one day be broken, nature's records remind us of something more enduring, that we are part of a vast and astonishing planet, one that constantly surprises us with its creativity and strength. So next time you hear about the world's tallest building or the fastest athlete, take a moment to think of Hyperion, or Chimborazo, or the Amazon River. Nature was here first, and in its quiet, powerful way, it remains the greatest record holder of them all. The 15 Unsolved Mysteries of Science. Science has illuminated many of the great questions of the universe, yet the more we discover, the more we realize how much remains hidden. Behind every law of physics, every cell of life, and every corner of the cosmos, mysteries linger, enigmatic puzzles that resist explanation. These are not obscure footnotes in dusty textbooks. They are living questions, the very edges of human knowledge. For the next 22 minutes, let's embark on a journey through 15 of the most fascinating scientific mysteries, curiosities that scientists still wrestle with, and which invite us to wonder if we may never fully understand them. Dark matter, the invisible skeleton of the universe. Astronomers have mapped galaxies with meticulous care, and yet what we actually see, stars, planets, glowing gas, accounts for less than 5% of the universe. The rest is an invisible shadow called dark matter. It neither emits nor absorbs light, but its gravity sculpts galaxies and bends starlight across space. Without it, the cosmos as we know it would fly apart. What is it made of? Exotic particles? Something beyond physics as we know it. For now, it remains the universe's greatest ghost. Dark energy, the force that tears the cosmos apart. If dark matter binds galaxies, dark energy does the opposite. It rips the universe apart. Since the 1990s, astronomers have realized that the expansion of the universe is not slowing down. It's accelerating. Something some mysterious pressure is driving galaxies farther and farther apart. Is it a new property of space itself? A hidden field? Or is our understanding of gravity incomplete? Imagine the universe as a balloon that not only inflates, but does so faster every second. Dark energy is the breath we can't see, the hand behind the expansion, the puzzle of consciousness. You can measure brain waves, scan neurons firing, and map the chemistry of thought. Yet one question remains untouched. Why do we feel like someone is inside our head? How do sparks of electricity and chemical signals produce the richness of experience? Pain, love, music, nostalgia? Consciousness is perhaps the most intimate mystery. We all have it, and yet we cannot explain it. The origin of life. 4 billion years ago, Earth was a sterile rock. Then, suddenly, molecules began to self-replicate, forming the first fragile cells. Was life sparked by volcanic vents at the ocean floor? Did it hitchhike here on meteorites? Or does life naturally arise wherever chemistry becomes complex enough? The line between chemistry and biology is blurry, and we still don't know exactly how the leap from lifeless molecules to living organisms happened. The Fermi paradox: where is everybody? With billions of stars in our galaxy and countless planets in habitable zones, logic suggests that the universe should be teeming with life. Yet, we hear nothing. The night sky remains silent. This contradiction is known as the Fermi paradox. Are civilizations short-lived? Do advanced beings avoid us? Or are we simply too primitive to notice the signals all around us? Every night as we look at the stars, we are staring at a riddle. If life is so probable, why are we so alone? The mystery of time. Time feels like an unstoppable river, flowing from past to future, but physics suggests time is not so straightforward. Einstein showed that time bends with gravity and speed. An astronaut traveling near the speed of light ages differently than someone on Earth. Yet why we feel time moving, why the past is fixed and the future open, remains a mystery. Is time fundamental, or is it merely an illusion created by the human brain? The place of memory in the brain. We know memories exist. We recall a childhood smell, the sound of a loved one's laughter, a street corner in the rain. But where exactly is a memory stored? Neurons connect in trillions of pathways, yet scientists have never pinpointed the exact location of a single memory. Memories are not like files on a computer. They seem to emerge from patterns across networks. Still, the enigma remains. How does a brain store a lifetime within a fist-sized organ? The quantum weirdness of reality. At the atomic scale, particles behave in ways that defy logic. A particle can exist in two places at once. It can tunnel through barriers that should be impenetrable. Even more bizarre, it seems reality does not settle until we observe it. What does this mean? Is the universe fundamentally probabilistic? Do we, by observing, help create reality? Quantum mechanics works flawlessly in practice, powering electronics, lasers, and medical imaging. But its philosophical meaning remains one of science's deepest puzzles. The wow signal. In 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio detected a mysterious burst from space, a signal so strong and precise that the astronomer who spotted it scribbled "wow" on the printout. For 72 seconds, the cosmos seemed to speak, but it never happened again. Was it a natural cosmic phenomenon, or the whisper of another civilization? Decades later, the wow signal is a cosmic cliffhanger that still has no answer. The question of free will. Do we truly make choices, or are our decisions the result of brain chemistry beyond our control? Experiments show that our brains sometimes decide milliseconds before we become aware of it. If so, what does that mean for responsibility, morality, and the essence of being human? The debate between determinism and free will is not only philosophical, but deeply scientific, cutting into neuroscience and physics alike. Why do we sleep? Every night, humans and animals alike surrender to unconsciousness. We risk vulnerability, we waste hours. And yet, nature insists sleep is non-negotiable. We know it helps with memory, healing, and brain maintenance, but the full reason why sleep exists remains elusive. Why not just evolve beyond it? The fact that every species sleeps suggests a hidden, powerful necessity science still cannot fully decode. The origin of the moon. Our moon is suspiciously large compared to Earth, larger than moons around bigger planets. Its composition is eerily similar to Earth's crust, but not identical. The leading theory is that a Mars-sized object smashed into Earth, blasting debris that formed the moon. But no model perfectly explains its chemistry and orbit. Was it captured or born of a cataclysm we can barely imagine? The limits of the human body. Why can't humans run as fast as a cheetah or regenerate limbs like salamanders? What sets the ultimate boundaries of endurance, intelligence, and lifespan? The human body seems capable of more than we realize, yet evolution has drawn invisible lines. Understanding those biological limits could mean reimagining what it means to be human. The multiverse hypothesis. Is our universe the only one? Some theories suggest that what we call the universe is just one bubble in a cosmic foam. Countless universes, each with its own laws of physics, expanding endlessly beyond our perception. If true, then somewhere out there might be another you, reading these words in a slightly different way. The multiverse remains speculation, but it's a mystery too tantalizing to ignore. The fate of the universe. Will everything end in a slow freeze as galaxies drift into eternal darkness? Or will it collapse in a fiery big crunch? Or worse, will a sudden vacuum decay erase the universe in an instant? The ultimate fate of everything, stars, planets, even the laws of physics themselves, remains uncertain. The universe began with a bang, but how will it end? Conclusion. The most captivating thing about science is not what we know, but what we don't. These 15 mysteries are not failures. They are frontiers, invitations to explore deeper. Each unanswered question reminds us that reality is stranger and richer than we imagine. And maybe, just maybe, some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to inspire us forever. People with superhuman abilities documented by science. Have you ever wondered if the human body hides abilities far beyond what we consider normal? History is full of stories about extraordinary individuals, people who seemed capable of defying biology, physics, and even common sense. Most of these stories live in myths and legends, but in some rare cases, science has stepped in and confirmed that certain people actually possessed abilities that were truly superhuman. Today, we are going to dive into the fascinating world of real-life superhumans, men and women whose skills, strength, or endurance have been carefully observed, studied, and documented by scientists. Some of them push the limits of the mind, others the limits of the body, and a few reveal mysteries that science still struggles to explain. Let's begin this journey. The Iceman. Wim Hof. One of the most famous modern examples is Wim Hof, known as the Iceman. Hof has shocked scientists for decades with his ability to withstand freezing temperatures that would normally kill a person. He has run half marathons above the Arctic Circle barefoot. He has climbed Mount Everest in nothing but shorts. He can sit for hours in ice baths, showing almost no drop in core body temperature. When researchers studied Hof, they discovered something remarkable. Through a combination of breathing techniques and meditation, Hof is able to consciously influence his autonomic nervous system, something once thought impossible. In controlled laboratory experiments, he could suppress his immune response to injected toxins, raise his core body temperature at will, and alter his heart rate and adrenaline levels. What makes Hoff's case incredible is that science long believed humans had no control over these automatic functions. Yet here was a man, showing us that the boundaries of human physiology are more flexible than we imagined. The human computer, Shakuntala Devi. Moving from physical extremes to mental brilliance, we find Shakuntala Devi, often called the human computer. Born in India in 1929, she demonstrated astonishing mental calculation abilities from a very young age. Unlike most prodigies, Devi had no formal training. She simply seemed to see numbers in a way nobody else could. She became internationally famous after performing feats of calculation that even modern computers of her time struggled with. In 1980, she entered the Guinness Book of World Records by multiplying two 13-digit numbers in just 28 seconds, something that would take most of us hours, even with a calculator. Scientists who studied her brain activity noted that she didn't calculate in the traditional sense. Instead, she described numbers as patterns, shapes, and even emotions. While savant syndrome sometimes explains extraordinary mental abilities, Devi was not autistic, nor did she have any obvious neurological condition. She was simply unique, a rare case of a human mind operating at an almost superhuman level. The man who never slept, Thai Ngoc. In Vietnam, there is a farmer named Thai Ngoc who reportedly has not slept since 1973, after a fever. That's over 50 years without a single night of sleep. If true, this defies everything we know about biology. Sleep deprivations usually leads to severe cognitive decline, hallucinations, organ failure, and eventually death. Yet Ngoc continues to live, work, and function in his community. Scientists who examined him confirmed that he indeed slept far less than normal, often not at all for days. But his body showed none of the expected consequences of sleep deprivation. His health was surprisingly stable, and his organs functioned normally. The case remains unexplained. How could a human body adapt to life without sleep? Did his fever trigger some rare neurological rewiring? Nobody knows. What is certain is that his existence challenges our deepest understanding of human necessity. Magnetic men and human magnets. Around the world, there have been reports of people with the bizarre ability to attract metal objects to their skin, as if they were living magnets. While many of these stories turned out to be hoaxes, there are genuine cases documented by researchers. One of the most studied is a man named Miroslav Magola, from Croatia. He demonstrated that he could stick spoons, keys, and even frying pans to his body without glue or tricks. Scientists tested him under controlled conditions and found that his skin had unusual adhesive properties, not magnetic in the true sense, but still inexplicable. His skin seemed to generate higher than normal friction and possibly some electrostatic attraction. Although not as glamorous as true magnetism, the ability remains real and strange enough to puzzle experts. The phenomenon has been catalogued in medical journals as human bioadhesion, but no one has yet explained why it appears in only a handful of individuals. The boy with unbreakable bones, Ben Underwood's echolocation. Superhuman ability does not always mean strength or resistance. Sometimes it is about adaptation. Take the case of Ben Underwood, a boy from California who lost his eyes to cancer at age 3. Unlike most blind individuals, Ben developed a completely unique survival strategy. He taught himself to use echolocation the same way bats and dolphins do. By clicking his tongue, Ben could detect echoes bouncing off objects around him. This gave him a mental map of his environment. He could ride a bicycle, play basketball, and even recognize the shape of objects, all without sight. Scientists confirmed that his echolocation was real. Brain scans showed that the clicks and echoes activated his visual cortex. the part of the brain normally used for sight. Somehow, his brain had rewired itself, turning sound into vision. Ben's story is both inspiring and scientifically groundbreaking, showing the plasticity of the human mind when pushed to the limit. Super endurance, Dean Karnazes. Endurance athletes push their bodies in ways most of us can barely imagine. But Dean Karnazes, an American ultramarathon runner, takes it to a whole new level. Karnazes can run hundreds of kilometers without stopping, seemingly immune to fatigue. In one famous feat, he ran 50 marathons in 50 days across all 50 US states. When scientists studied him, they found that his muscles produce far less lactic acid than normal. Lactic acid is what makes muscles burn and eventually fail during exercise. In Karnazes, his body seems to recycle this acid as fuel, allowing him to run far beyond normal limits. In other words, Karnazes represents what might be the future of human endurance, an example of biology optimized to survive the most extreme conditions of movement and exhaustion. Pain immunity, the woman who couldn't feel pain. In 2019, scientists at University College London announced the study of a woman known only as Jo Cameron. She had lived her entire life without ever feeling physical pain. She gave birth to 2 children with no discomfort. She broke bones and didn't realize until doctors pointed it out. When researchers analyzed her DNA, they discovered a rare genetic mutation in the FAAH gene, which regulates pain sensation. The mutation not only eliminated pain, but also gave her unusual resistance to anxiety and fear. Jo described herself as permanently optimistic, rarely stressed, and always happy. The discovery of her condition has huge medical implications. If doctors can replicate her mutation in drugs, it could revolutionize pain management for millions of people worldwide. Extraordinary memory, Kim Peek, the real Rain Man. Kim Peek was the inspiration for the movie Rain Man. Unlike the fictional character, Peek had an astonishing memory capacity. He could read 2 pages of a book at the same time, one with each eye, and remember almost everything he read. His recall spanned thousands of books, historical facts, and even entire phone directories. Neurologists who studied him found that his brain lacked the normal connection between hemispheres, the corpus callosum. This unusual wiring may have allowed his brain to dedicate more power to memory storage. Although he struggled with social interaction and daily living tasks, his memory made him one of the most extraordinary savants ever documented. The strongest man on Earth, Zishay Breitbart. At the beginning of the 20th century, Zishay Breitbart became legendary for his superhuman strength. Known as the Iron King, he could bend horseshoes with his bare hands, lift wagons filled with people, and pull trains with his teeth. While strongmen often rely on tricks, Breitbart's feats were witnessed and documented by scientists of the time. His muscle density and tendon strength were beyond normal limits. Researchers suggested he may have had a genetic advantage, such as higher levels of fast-twitch muscle fibers or connective tissue adaptations. Though Breitbart died young, his case remains one of the most convincing examples of raw superhuman strength. Conclusion: the superhuman within us. As we've seen, people with superhuman abilities are not just comic book fantasies. They exist, and science has confirmed their cases. Some, like Wim Hof and Dean Karnazes, reveal the untapped potential of training and adaptation. Others, like Jo Cameron and Kim Peek, remind us of the mysteries hidden in our genes and brains. What these cases teach us is that the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is not as sharp as we once thought. Each of us carries hidden capacities, waiting to be discovered. The people we've explored today are living proof that evolution, biology, and the human spirit still have secrets to reveal. So the next time you think of superheroes, remember, some of them walk among us, and their powers are very, very real. the motives and theories behind the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. A historical and curiosity-rich exploration. The uniqueness of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln occupies a singular place in the history of the United States. His presidency, forged in the crucible of the Civil War, combined extraordinary leadership with deep humanity. He is remembered as the great emancipator, the man who preserved the Union and set it on a path toward the abolition of slavery. But his legacy is also forever bound to the tragic event of April 14th, 1865, when he became the first American president to be assassinated. His death at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. shocked a nation just beginning to breathe after 4 years of fratricidal conflict. The assassination of Lincoln has been studied from countless perspectives. On the surface, it was the act of John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor and Confederate sympathizer. But the motives, the wider conspiracy, and the strange coincidences surrounding Lincoln's death have fascinated historians, conspiracy theorists, and the general public for over 150 years. In examining these motives and theories, one finds not only a story of political violence, but also a portrait of a man whose death generated myths, legends, and enduring curiosities. The historical background: a nation at war's end. By April 1865, the Civil War was effectively over. Confederate General Robert E. Lee had surrendered his Army of Northern Virginia to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th. The Union had prevailed, but the wounds of war were still raw. Cities were destroyed, families divided, and 4 million enslaved people stood on the uncertain threshold of freedom. Lincoln had just delivered his second inaugural address on March 4th, a speech remarkable for its humility and religious depth. "With malice toward none, with charity for all," he had urged, reflecting his desire for reconciliation rather than vengeance. Yet not everyone shared this vision. Many in the South felt embittered, humiliated, and fearful of what emancipation would mean. At the same time, radical voices in the North demanded harsher punishment for rebels. This volatile atmosphere created fertile ground for extremist acts. For Confederate sympathizers like Booth, Lincoln represented tyranny and destruction. In Booth's mind, assassinating the president was not only revenge, but also an attempt to rescue Southern honor and possibly revive the dying cause of the Confederacy. The motives of John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was a celebrated actor, handsome and charismatic, belonging to a famous theatrical family. But beneath the surface, he harbored deep political passions. He was an outspoken advocate of slavery, an ardent supporter of the Confederacy, and a man consumed by hatred of Lincoln. Booth's motives were both ideological and personal. Ideologically, he believed Lincoln had betrayed the Constitution by waging war against the South and destroying its institutions. In Booth's words, Lincoln was a tyrant and despot. Personally, Booth was frustrated by his declining career and jealous of the fame Lincoln enjoyed. Originally, Booth had plotted not to kill, but to kidnap Lincoln. The plan was to abduct the president and exchange him for Confederate prisoners of war. But after Lee's surrender, Booth's desperation deepened. He shifted from kidnapping to assassination, hoping that killing Lincoln, Vice President Andrew Johnson, and Secretary of State William H. Seward simultaneously would decapitate the Union government and give the Confederacy a chance to regroup. The conspiracy: Booth and his accomplices. Booth did not act alone. His small band of conspirators included Lewis Powell, also known as Lewis Payne, George Atzerodt, David Herold, and Mary Surratt. Each had a specific role. Powell was assigned to kill Secretary of State Seward, Atzerodt to kill Vice President Johnson, and Booth to kill Lincoln. The conspirators often met at Mary Surratt's boarding house, which later became infamous in the trial that followed. Booth, as the charismatic leader, inspired the group with his fiery speeches and dramatic sense of destiny. Yet not all conspirators had the same level of commitment. Atzerodt, for example, never attempted his assigned task. The scope of the conspiracy raises enduring questions. Was this merely a group of desperate individuals, or was there a broader Confederate hand behind them? Some theories suggest links between Booth and Confederate agents operating in Canada. The evidence remains circumstantial, but the possibility of a wider network has kept historians debating for generations. The night at Ford's Theatre. On April 14, 1865, Good Friday, Lincoln decided to attend a play at Ford's Theatre, Our American Cousin, a popular comedy. He was accompanied by his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, and their guests, Major Henry Rathbone and Clara Harris. Booth, familiar with the theater's layout as a performer, knew the president would be in the presidential box. At about 10:15 p.m., during one of the play's funniest lines, Booth slipped into the box, drew a single-shot Derringer pistol, and fired a bullet into the back of Lincoln's head. Rathbone attempted to stop him, and Booth slashed him with a dagger before leaping onto the stage, crying, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. A little-known curiosity. Booth broke his leg in the leap, though he still managed to escape on horseback. Lincoln, unconscious, was carried across the street to the Peterson house, where he remained in a coma until he died at 7:22 a.m. on April 15th. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton's words at his passing became immortal. "Now he belongs to the ages." The immediate aftermath and national mourning. The assassination plunged the nation into grief. Churches tolled bells, businesses closed, and cities draped themselves in black. For many, Lincoln's death was not only the loss of a leader, but also the loss of a father figure who had guided the country through its darkest hour. Booth fled south, aided by Harold. After a 12-day manhunt, Union soldiers surrounded him in a barn in Virginia. Booth refused to surrender and was shot. The other conspirators were captured, tried by a military tribunal, and several, including Mary Surratt, were executed. Surratt's execution remains controversial, as some argue her guilt was never fully proven. Curiosities and eerie coincidences. Lincoln's assassination is surrounded by a wealth of curiosities that add to its aura of tragedy and mystery. Lincoln's dreams of his death. Just days before the assassination, Lincoln told friends of a dream in which he wandered through the White House and found mourners weeping over a coffin. When he asked who had died, someone replied, "The President." Coincidences with John F. Kennedy. Over time, people have noted eerie parallels between Lincoln's assassination and that of John F. Kennedy. Both presidents were elected in a year ending in 1860 and 1960. Both were succeeded by men named Johnson, and both were shot in the head on a Friday. Relics of the night. The blood-stained pillow on which Lincoln died, the Derringer pistol, and even strands of his hair were preserved. These artifacts remain objects of fascination in museums. The unfinished evening. Mary Todd Lincoln reportedly invited General Grant and his wife to join them at Ford's Theatre, but they declined. Had they attended, security might have been tighter. Such curiosities remind us that history is not only shaped by grand causes, but also by strange accidents and coincidences. Theories and debates. Was Booth truly alone? While Booth is undoubtedly the central figure, debates have persisted about whether he acted entirely on his own initiative. Some theories suggest Confederate government officials, especially those based in Canada, may have encouraged or even directed him. Booth himself carried a diary in which several pages were missing, fueling speculation that evidence of broader involvement was suppressed. Others have pointed to the astonishing ease with which Booth carried out his plan. How could the President of the United States be left so vulnerable? Was there negligence or even complicity among those tasked with protecting him? Lincoln had few guards, and his bodyguard that night, John Parker, actually left his post to watch the play. Though most historians agree Booth was not part of a vast conspiracy, the unanswered questions ensure that the assassination continues to inspire alternative theories. The legacy of Lincoln's assassination. Lincoln's death transformed him from a political leader into a martyr. His vision of reconciliation was cut short, and the period of Reconstruction unfolded with far greater bitterness than he might have intended. Had Lincoln lived, some speculate, the integration of freed slaves and the healing of North and South might have followed a gentler course. Internationally, his assassination shocked the world. European newspapers eulogized him as a modern statesman of unmatched moral stature. For Americans, the memory of Lincoln's sacrifice became part of national identity. His image, words, and legacy were enshrined in monuments, literature, and collective memory. Conclusion: a life and death of profound meaning. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln cannot be understood solely as the act of one man, John Wilkes Booth. It was the product of a nation divided, a war that unleashed passions of hate and revenge, and a moment in history that magnified the fragility of leadership. Yet beyond the political and historical dimensions, Lincoln's death carries a deeply human resonance. Lincoln was not only a president, but also a man of introspection, humor, melancholy, and extraordinary empathy. His assassination left Americans with the sense of having lost not merely a leader, but a unique moral compass. Even in death, Lincoln's aura only grew, and the curiosities and myths surrounding his final days reflect a people's attempt to hold on to a figure who symbolized their highest aspirations. In studying the motives and theories of his assassination, one cannot escape the sense that Lincoln was truly special, a man who guided his country through catastrophe, paid the ultimate price, and whose story continues to echo across centuries. The enigmatic Amazon. Wonders, stories, and curiosities of the world's largest rainforest. The Amazon is more than just a forest. It is an ocean of green, a living library of nature, and a realm where myth and reality often blur. Stretching across 9 countries, dominated by Brazil, but also touching Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. It is a space so vast that it can feel endless. It covers more than 5.5 million square kilometers, an area larger than the European Union. Within this expanse, life thrives with such intensity that scientists often call it the lungs of the Earth. But the Amazon is not only an ecological treasure, it is also a stage for human history, cultural encounters, legendary creatures, and scientific mysteries. In this exploration, we will wander through the dense foliage of its history, discover curiosities that surprise even the most experienced travelers, and explore entertaining aspects of this unique ecosystem that has fascinated explorers, scientists, and storytellers for centuries. The birthplace of rivers. One of the most striking features of the Amazon is, of course, its mighty river. The Amazon River is considered the largest by volume of water and rivals the Nile for the title of the longest river in the world. Every second, it pours more than 200,000 cubic meters of water into the Atlantic Ocean. To put that into perspective, in a single day, the Amazon releases enough water to supply New York City for almost a decade. What makes this river even more extraordinary is its hidden web of tributaries. More than 1,100 rivers feed into it, some of them larger than major rivers in other parts of the world. For instance, the Madeira, Negro, and Tapajos rivers could each be celebrated as monumental in their own right, yet they are just branches of the Amazon. From space, satellites capture its ever-changing paths, braids, and islands, creating the impression of a giant organism in motion. And here's a curiosity. In certain stretches, 2 rivers of different colors meet but do not mix for miles. The most famous example is the Meeting of Waters near Manaus, where the black Rio Negro meets the sandy brown Amazon, or Solimões, as it is called in Brazil. The contrast of the dark, coffee-colored water against the lighter caramel shade creates a natural phenomenon that looks almost surreal. A kingdom of biodiversity, the Amazon is often described as the richest reservoir of life on Earth. Roughly 1 in 10 known species on the planet lives here. Scientists estimate that more than 390 billion trees grow in this forest, belonging to about 16,000 different species. Birds, such as the harpy eagle, the most powerful bird of prey in the Americas, soar above the canopy. Pink river dolphins, known locally as botos, swim gracefully in the murky waters, surrounded by schools of neon-colored fish. Insects, some dazzling and others terrifying, number in the millions, with new species being discovered regularly. An entertaining curiosity is that some frogs in the Amazon are so tiny that they can sit comfortably on the tip of your finger, while others, like the Goliath frog, can be larger than a dinner plate. Another surprising fact is that scientists once found a species of fungus capable of eating plastic, raising hopes for new environmental solutions hidden within the forest. And perhaps most astonishingly, new species are discovered at a rate of 1 every 2 days on average. The forest is so unexplored that even today, in the 21st century, biologists stumble upon unknown plants, insects, and sometimes even mammals, ancient civilizations and hidden cities. For centuries, European explorers believed that the Amazon was a virgin wilderness, sparsely populated and untouched. But modern archaeology tells a different story. Beneath the canopy, hidden under centuries of vegetation, lies evidence of vast civilizations that once thrived here. Using satellite imagery and LiDAR, a laser-based scanning technology, researchers have uncovered geometric earthworks, circles, squares, and networks of ditches that suggest large, organized societies. These structures, known as geoglyphs, are spread across hundreds of kilometers in areas of present-day Brazil and Bolivia. They indicate that long before European arrival, the Amazon was home to cities, ceremonial centers, and agricultural systems. One of the most intriguing discoveries relates to terra preta, or black earth. This incredibly fertile soil, enriched by humans with charcoal, bones, and organic waste, was created deliberately thousands of years ago. It still remains rich today, defying the naturally poor quality of Amazonian soil. Some scientists believe that millions of people may have lived here before European diseases decimated local populations. These findings challenge the old idea that the Amazon was inhospitable to complex societies. Instead, it was once a thriving cultural landscape, buzzing with innovation, trade, and ritual. Myths and legends of the jungle. The Amazon is not just a place of science, it is also a cradle of stories. Indigenous peoples have passed down myths for generations, blending the natural and supernatural in ways that make the forest itself feel alive. One of the most enduring legends is that of the Amazons, the warrior women described by early explorers who gave the river its name. Whether they truly existed or were an invention, the image of fierce women warriors has persisted, becoming part of global mythology. Then there are the river dolphins, or botos, surrounded by tales of transformation. Local folklore says that these dolphins can turn into handsome men at night, seducing women during festivals, and then disappearing back into the water by dawn. Even today, some communities whisper about children fathered by mysterious strangers who were, in truth, dolphins in disguise. There are also chilling legends of creatures like the Mapinguari, a giant one-eyed beast with the roar of thunder, or the Curupira, a forest spirit with backward-facing feet that confuses hunters by leaving misleading tracks. Whether one believes in these beings or not, the stories show how deeply the Amazon's people are connected to their environment and how they interpret its mysteries. The European encounter. When Spanish explorer Francisco de Orellana navigated the Amazon River in 1542, he became the first European to travel its full length. His journey was filled with hunger, disease, and encounters with indigenous communities. It was Orellana who reported the existence of fierce women warriors, echoes of the Greek myth of the Amazons, which gave the river its lasting name. Later centuries saw waves of adventurers, missionaries, and naturalists venture into the forest. Some sought gold and spices, others sought souls to convert, and many sought scientific knowledge. During the rubber boom of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Amazon became a center of wealth and suffering. Towns like Manaus and Belém grew rich from the export of rubber, used in tires for the rapidly expanding automobile industry. Manaus even built an opera house, the Teatro Amazonas, decorated with marble and chandeliers imported from Europe. Yet behind the glamour lay exploitation. Indigenous peoples and workers were enslaved, tortured, and killed in one of the darkest chapters of Amazonian history. Entertaining curiosities of the jungle. The Amazon is not only grand and serious, it also has amusing and quirky sides. Consider these. There are fish that can walk on land. The armored catfish and some species of eels are able to wriggle across muddy surfaces during floods. There is a spider that looks exactly like a golden coin when it spreads its legs, shimmering under flashlight. Certain ants are so large that locals call them bullet ants, because their sting is said to feel like being shot. Indigenous tribes even use them in initiation rituals, requiring young men to endure dozens of stings to prove their courage. In some parts of the forest, the trees are so tall that they create rain under the canopy, moisture that never reaches the ground, but instead drips endlessly from leaf to leaf. Even the river itself has unusual quirks. In certain places, the Amazon is so wide that you cannot see the opposite shore. At its mouth, near the Atlantic, the width exceeds 150 kilometers, wider than the distance between some European capitals. The Amazon today. Challenges and hopes. The Amazon of today stands at a crossroads. Deforestation, illegal mining, logging, and climate change threaten its future. Each year, vast areas are cleared for agriculture, often for cattle ranching and soy production. Scientists warn that if deforestation continues, parts of the forest may transform into savanna, losing their biodiversity and their ability to regulate the planet's climate. But there is also hope. Indigenous communities are increasingly recognized as key guardians of the forest. Protected areas and international conservation efforts aim to preserve biodiversity, and global awareness about the Amazon's importance is greater than ever. Conclusion: a living mystery. The Amazon is a place where science, history, and myth intersect. It is home to extraordinary creatures, hidden civilizations, and stories that ignite the imagination. It is both fragile and resilient, ancient and ever-changing. To walk through its endless green corridors is to feel both small and deeply connected to something larger than oneself. Every rustle in the leaves could be a bird never before seen. Every bend in the river, a reminder of untold adventures, and every story told by its people a glimpse into a world where magic and reality are inseparable. The Amazon is not just a forest, it is a universe, and even after centuries of exploration, we are only beginning to understand it.